for All in Context, and this is where we discover some of the quirks and idiosyncrasies of Korean culture, especially through the eyes of Ryan Kulp, who has now joined me in the studio. Good morning, Ryan.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm great. How are you doing?
Doing well. Got a new shirt. It looks very cool.
You got a new shirt? Congratulations. Has it been a long time since you got a new shirt?
It's really, unfortunately a very long time.
Well done, you. All right. And you're learning more cooking as well. I saw you on TV the other day as well.
That's right. In fact, we have a very special episode coming out. I don't
Chuseok special?
A Chuseok special.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
What you learn how to do?
I don't know if I can say, but...
It's a spoiler just for our listeners.
It's a spoiler, but I can say it wasn't a normal episode. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of things we changed, and we got to make fire. I'll say that.
Ooh, sounds hot. All right, we'll check it out definitely. And before we get into today's topic, we want to remind our listeners about the first question of the day. We use a lot of these, don't we, when we're sending text messages, especially to express emotions, sometimes ideas or kind of reactions as well. So what is this that we use in our text messages? 메시지를 주고받을 때 작은 이미지나 아이콘 등을 이용해서 우리 생각이나 감정, 리액션을 나타낼 때 이것을 쓰죠. 이것이 무엇인지 pound or sharp 1013번으로 보내주시면 됩니다. Send in your answers to sharp or pound 1013. You have another 15 minutes or so to do so. All right, so we are talking about text messaging. It's almost become kind of like, I guess, this corner. We're talking a lot about the cultural sort of idiosyncrasies, but they're also related a bit to business, which I think is an interesting take because of your kind of business background too, right?
Sure. Yeah, I've that's kind of maybe why I wanted to talk about this today, is because in the United States, and I think just in the West in general, business and friends use different tools to communicate. If I'm talking to a colleague, I might not text them. And if I'm talking to a friend, I probably won't email them, for example.
Really? Okay. So for business, it's usually email.
In my opinion, in meetings and formally written language, right? So when you're texting, you're probably going to use short language. Instead of tomorrow, you're going to write TMRW.
Right.
Instead of YOU, people write the letter U. And of course, if it's a colleague or client or whatever, you don't want to use that kind of language, and therefore you're going to switch mediums. And so that was kind of on my mind, and I started digging into texting in general and thinking about a lot of other differences I've noticed between texting in Korea and texting in, for example, the United States.
Right, because definitely in Korea, I mean, we do use email, but I think sometimes we think it's a little too slow. We want an instant reaction. We want that 빨리 reaction. So oftentimes we'll resort to text, right? Whether it's kind of through our smartphones or through an app.
That's right. But I would argue that Bali has nothing to do with which platform. It's just which platform you pay attention to. So I've had 9 to 5 hours in the United States, for example, where I email someone and 2 minutes later get a response.
That is true. But I think with Korean people, they're not as fast to check their emails. And they're a little bit, they're more lenient when it comes to replying on emails as well. That's why when we want something very fast, like ASAP response, we will resort to text or if not, a phone call. But nowadays, who uses a phone call?
Ooh, gross.
Who uses a smartphone for a phone call? Exactly. But I am kind of curious, why do you think, I mean, because texting is available in the US as well, and we know that, they do like this kind of fast response, they're very efficient as well. Why is it that email is preferred? What do you think is the reason?
Ooh. Well, first of all, it's about the context of your tools and your apps. So in the US, we don't really use native texting apps like we have here in Korea. Right. We just kind of use whatever's built into your phone. Okay. And what's built into your phone is not particularly exciting. It's kind of boring.
You mean with the little things that you can use?
Yeah, there's not a lot of stuff you can you can do an up vote, down vote, and then text. And then I come to Korea, and now text messages are very interactive. We have groups, we have video calls baked in. I used to do all of my calls through texting video calls. I didn't even have people's numbers in Korea when I got here. And so that alone makes people, I think, lean towards wherever they can express themselves most, which in Korea is these texting apps. And then another component is that when you're in Korea and you're texting, you could open this kind of hub and see a little bit of everything going on in your life. So like you mentioned a moment ago, you can book a vaccine reservation, you can look at a rental car, you can read ads. You can get your gift tokens.
You can send presents for
You can send presents. And I've sent presents. I sent someone a cactus, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? I just texted someone a cactus. Yeah. But in America, you can't really do any of that with the text messaging, so it's not exciting, and we don't consider it, in my opinion, a serious form of communication because it doesn't have the features to be serious.
I mean, there are definitely messaging apps that are quite widely used in the U.S., like What's
something,
right? I mean, there are some that are widely used. Are they not? But just not as widely used as the one that we use here.
Perhaps in particular pockets, I can say that I've never had any of those apps.
Oh, really?
While
Even
living
with
in the
friends?
US. Never. And I've never had a friend say like, oh, if you don't have that, I can't talk to you.
Okay.
But when I went to Europe, I did notice that those kinds of apps are a little more popular there.
And they are, free basically, right? Usually they're free, whereas the text messages, if you add them up, they can cost something if you're not on the same phone or whatever.
They can, but as they say, anytime the product is free, it's actually not the product. You are the product.
Of course. So how long did it take for you to put that app on your phone when you got to Korea? Was there immediate pressure to do so?
Immediate pressure at the airport level.
Really?
Yeah. While waiting at the entrance gate, I think it had something to do with quarantining and something like that. So I needed it for that. And then immediately when I started meeting people, they would say, what's your this? What's your handle? And I'm used to people saying, like, what's your email? If I don't know you very well, it felt strange to give someone my like username. So I really got it immediately, but I didn't embrace it until I've been here a few months. And I would say now I've been here 11 months, and I've now reached the point where I just assume there's a lot of unread messages at any moment.
Oh, yes.
And I kind of like sit down every week to go through them.
Really? So it's turned into like an email service, I guess.
Exactly. I've reached peak chat. And I noticed this from someone I know named Seong, and she kind of always has like 250 unread messages. And it made my brain hurt because I'm kind of an inbox zero guy in email. I just want to crush everything. And I started noticing she never responded until like a week later to some people. And now I've achieved that. I've unlocked that level of texting.
Maybe that's a generational thing, because I have to say with email, I'm quite comfortable to let my emails kind of build up, especially my personal email account. But when it comes to work email, of course, I'm much more prompt. I'll take maybe 20 minutes to answer. But with a messaging app, I can't stand having like one or two or like 10 forbidden. No way that would happen for me.
I think part of it is that when I used to text in America, it was always friends. So this app I opened up, it's like a hub for hanging out and fun stuff. So it was an escape from email and other parts of my life. I open my text. This means I have something fun to do now. Whereas in Korea, I open up this app and I don't know what's in there. There might be like a tax bill.
Pandora's box, yes.
Yeah, Mapogu is telling me I can't go out to eat tomorrow night. It's not necessarily fun times. So I've started to just get like fatigue about it.
It tells you everything. It is like your personal assistant. It will tell you everything. And it will alert you to every message that your friend sends. But also, the thing is, it's the blurriness, I think, between the work and the friend area that people start getting fatigue from this messaging app. And now they've created like multiple IDs maybe sometimes, and they'll only give one out for their business or one out for their friends.
Yes. It's the blurriness, and it's also the gamification built in that I think cannot be overstated, which is the read receipt. So you text someone and it's you get to know whether they read your message or not. And that is a very kind of borderline dangerous feature that creates a lot of tension when you're texting people in Korea, because you do not want to leave someone unread. And in the States, you can turn off that feature. But in Korea, you cannot. And the developers know this. And so this compels a kind of ping pong forever.
So it compels more people to use it as well, and more often. I mean, I think I mentioned in the opening, 11 billion messages apparently are sent every day just using that one app, that sort of Kungmin app. But at the same time, I mean, I guess with emails, like you say, people will usually reply back in the US maybe 2 minutes or so, about roughly the time that it would take maybe for us to reply with the text message. And then with the email, you can also mark as read or unread, or is that also an option, I guess?
Those are features. Yeah, you don't have to let the other person know, whereas in Korea, it's common to talk to a friend and say, yeah, this person just told me blah, 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 but I didn't read it yet. And it's how you know, like, now everyone understands what you mean, because you just read it, but you're like, but I didn't read it yet. So there's these strategies of like looking at your push notifications. It's wild.
The worst thing you can do is to read it and not reply.
Yes.
And allow
It's
like
a
more
sin.
than 24 hours to pass. That is like the
Friendship
major
over.
Friendship over. And not only friendship, but when it comes to business, if
Yes.
it's from your boss or a client and you haven't replied, or
Yes.
especially after having read it, that is the huge no-no. Have you been stressed with work? I mean, but you do get work-related texts through that app too, right? How are you doing with that?
I get work-related texts, and sometimes I kind of read them accidentally because I'm in friend zone. I'm in friend time, and I read a text that says,
You let your guards down.
yeah, neil kaji, and then I've read it now, but I don't want to do it yet, and I can't like reverse that behavior. Whereas in email, you can say mark is unread, and it reminds me to look at it again. In these texting apps, it's not as sophisticated, so you kind of have to just store this in like your RAM of your brain and go back in and say, okay, I'm ready to work now. So I've started to get fatigued. I've started to just let go. There's like a vocal coach I wanted to work with on my Korean pronunciation, and I haven't replied to her in like 30 days. I'm sorry for listening. I just can't. It's like so far down.
It's just blocked now.
It's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen. The actual language that we use is also different. Have you noticed?
Yes.
I mean, obviously we have those little cute kind of icons that we use to express our emotions. But the language, like you said, when you're texting in English and also sending an email, usually for business, the language changes as well. But since your Korean is you're still learning, how are you able to navigate this kind of the messaging app world in terms of language? Are you using mostly English, and how's that going?
Depending on who I'm talking to, I speak like 100% Korean or 50% Korean, just as a way to practice. But I learn a lot of new words.
Shortened words, right?
That's right. I was talking to a chaka on another show, and they said something like, 천와 보증하다 or something. I was like, what does that mean? And I was like, all I know about 천와 is 하다 and 봤다, and it means like I wasn't answering the phone, like I was absent from the phone call. So I had to like translate this. So I'm constantly jumping between apps just to respond to a text, which maybe makes it worse for me, but I do it to myself.
You have, I mean, I'm sure you've texted or contacted people from other countries as well in the course of your business, whether you were in the US or Korea as well. Do you think this is a truly unique Korean thing, though? I mean, this kind of maybe dependence on one sort of major messaging app as well, but the messaging culture as well, does this seem like a uniquely Korean thing, or do you see it kind of proliferating throughout the world?
It's probably proliferating, but I can at least say that it's not an American thing. There are no kind of like subs that we subscribe to in our texts in America. There's not one main app that everybody uses to communicate. I don't think texting is considered a hub for what's going on in your life in America for really any American, even if they use one of these popular apps out there.
Why do you think so? Is it giving too much control?
I think part of it is due to regulation. There's a lot of regulation in the U.S. that makes any kind of sort of push notification advertising illegal through text messages. If you get caught with a bunch of phone numbers sending messages people didn't ask for, you can get in trouble. So actually all forms of automated text message in the U.S. are now illegal. So when you do get batch messages, some of these companies actually hire labor to manually click send in an administrative platform to thousands of people. That's the kind of loophole workaround. Whereas in Korea, it's just kind of expected. You're going to get 1 or 2 spam calls a week. You're going to get a few text message advertisements from a store you shopped at 9 months ago. I'm still getting texts from a furniture store where I bought hangers. I bought clothes hangers, and I'm getting advertisements from them.
Right.
And that's just kind of how it is. So I think it's become acceptable here, but I don't think it's yet accepted in the West.
Like you say, we like this app. We all download it because it's free, but it's definitely not free. Like you say, when the service is free, we are the product. We are the product, yes. Exactly. It's a scary kind of reflection on it, but at the same time, it's permeated our lives to such an extent that I don't know how things will evolve in the future, but I'm sure things will change.
I think so.
And we'll talk about that then, I guess. Thank you very much for bringing that up,
me.
Ryan. We'll see you next week.
See you.
All right, and we'll be back with part 2 after this.